Thank you. But before I turn it over to Kevin, a correction. I think the Gremlins ate a video. That was from Ana Nigro from PASB, the Pan-American School of Bahia. My apologies.
I'm an 11th grader at the Pan-American School of Bahia. After the past 8 years, the world has become skeptical about U.S. leadership and policies. The recent financial crisis is viewed as one of the latest signs of the decline of U.S. power. The U.S. now needs to reestablish its leadership and renew relationships with allies. How would you, Senator McCain, and you, Senator Obama, work to ensure cooperation from U.S. allies to create more alliances to find global solutions to global problems?
Kevin, you have...
Sure. I just want to say that I completely agree with all of these things that Steve has laid out. In fact, this is where the last two presidencies have fallen down, both George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. Under Bush, I think much of what Steve described as being wrong with the U.S. position is true. And I think in every one of the cases that you mentioned, John McCain agrees, and John McCain has been campaigning and has opposed this administration on climate change, on diplomacy, on everything that you listed, and he is running to change all of those things as well. Secondly, the presidency of Bill Clinton, I think, was far too timid. I think we had a fairly disengaged presidency and a fairly disengaged United States around the world that allowed for a lot of problems to grow and develop to the point where they hit us back at home. And lastly, what you mentioned about sitting down with our enemies, I think it's incredibly naive to expect that we can go and sit down with a leader like Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in Iran. What do we have to talk about? The man has said that he wants to annihilate the state of Israel, wipe it off the map. He's called it a rotting corpse. What is there to discuss with a man who's, at the same time as he's saying this, developing nuclear weapons? I think, yes, we have to engage our allies. We have to do it with a president who understands all of the common and collective interests that our allies share with us and have the ability and the knowledge and the personal knowledge to be able to coordinate a U.S. public diplomacy that would achieve those ends. I think that the last two presidents failed that test, and John McCain would succeed.
Okay, I just want to tweak that a little bit. And the question was about how do you go about restoring the allies, presumably that have been lost in the recent times. What specifically do you do to different from the administration, the sitting administration?
Well, I would reiterate to a certain degree what I just said, which is these 5 points that the Secretaries of State discussed. They're discussing the things that establish your leadership role and inspire confidence in the world. I think first and foremost, you'd want to inspire confidence in your own allies. One of the worst mistakes that was made in going into Iraq, besides the fact of going into a country that was not directly threatening us in the first place, the mistake that was made, unlike George Bush's father, who actually put together a real coalition, a real international coalition to deal with the problems in the early 90s, this particular president did none of that. And we see what's come of it. If you're going to inspire confidence with your allies, you have to lead on a variety of policies, not just in your direct relationships with them on issues that are important to them. You have to establish a leadership role in leading issues that demonstrate that you care about issues around the world and you care to cooperate and collaborate and you care to engage adversaries in a way that may lead to productive ends.
Okay.
I agree completely, and I think that the example of the Russian invasion of Georgia a few months ago was a classic example of why John McCain is the right leader and Barack Obama is the wrong leader. John McCain's reaction to that was to immediately point out to the world personally and repeatedly that this was aggression, that a country like Russia has been destabilizing its neighbor for a long time, that this is just the first step with its intention to control its near abroad in Ukraine and in all of the other nations that it can get itself into, that Georgia's position as a transit area for energy to many of the developing nations that are important allies of ours was key. And what did Barack Obama do? He faxed the statement from his vacation home and then went back on vacation. I think that shows a real lack of understanding about what is important.
Okay, I think we better go on. We have a question now. I hope this is the question, from Luana Dias Gomes. She's from the American School of Rio.
Hello, my name is Luana Dias Gomes and I'm a juror at American School of Rio de Janeiro. And today I have a question for Senator Obama. Senator Obama, in 2002 you claimed to be against starting a war in Iraq. Today though, you seem to be in favor of starting a war in Afghanistan for a similar tactical mission. Don't you think it is a contradiction?
I don't think it's a contradiction at all. The point is that those who attacked the United States on September 11th came from that region. We're talking about Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. They came from Afghanistan and to a certain degree in the hills, in the mountains in Pakistan. They did not come from Iraq. We've devoted huge and enormous amounts of national treasure focused on a country that posed no threat to us while we've allowed the Taliban and Al-Qaeda to regrow. They are, by the Defense Department's own analysis, at pre-9/11 levels now in terms of their strength and abilities in Afghanistan. We never dealt with the problem to begin with. The issue, though, goes beyond just military power. There seems to me that there's never going to be any military solution to an insurgent problem. The Russians learned that in Afghanistan in the early 1980s. You're never going to be able to win against an insurgent war simply with military power. But if you engage in those countries and you work on building alliances within the communities, within the citizenry there, you work on building schools, you work on investing in businesses and opportunities for people there in almost precisely the same way that we did after World War II in rebuilding Germany and Japan, then you've got an opportunity to have extremists or extremist elements be less likely to want to be engaged with organizations like the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. You have an opportunity to re-engage in those countries and to rebuild. Military power on its own is not going to get you anywhere. However, I do agree with Senator Obama that something has to be done in Afghanistan now because the problem was never adequately dealt with to begin with back in 2003.